Believe it or not, it's been 7 years since Honda last had a CBR600RR for sale in the UK. But it's back, it's better than ever, and I'm going to go straight in and give you 3 really important pieces of information. This package weighs in at 193 kg. It's going to cost you 10.5 grand, and it's going to make 119 brake horsepower, which is not bad. Ultimately, we're just pleased to see Honda back in the supersport sector. We've missed this bike. We want more bikes like this in the market. And I'm off to test this at Portimao in a couple of days' time. But before I do, I wanted to go over some of the tech with you. There's no way of dressing this up other than to just tell it how it is. Ultimately, some of the parts on this machine are carryover and can be traced back to 2007. But on top of that firm basis, there's a whole raft of technology and enhancements which are going to make the CBR600RR one of the best machines in this sector for 2024. So what's new about it? Well, we should probably start with the tech, because that's the big news with this. So a lot of the electronics, the suite on this bike has actually been derived from the Fireblade. What that means is you get the fancy new TFT dash as per the Blade, with 9 levels of traction control, 5 power modes, 3 levels of wheelie control, 3 levels of engine braking, and an adjustable quick shifter too. From cornering ABS to a 6-axis IMU, this bike has got it all, as you'd expect on any contemporary sports bike. And for 2024, it's also got bigger throttle bodies up from 40mm to 44 to enhance the fueling and controllability of the motor. The output of the machine is obviously very similar to what we've known before, but I'm not going to slate that. If I'm honest, just seeing this bike back and knowing how good that engine is really quite exciting. They didn't need to give it a major rework. They didn't need to go in there and increase the output by an extra 50 horsepower or something like that. They just needed to get this bike back in their range, and it had a strong foundation in the inline-4 motor that powers this machine. So let's talk about the engine. Ultimately, it's very similar to what's come before. Still an inline-4, the same bore and stroke, the same compression ratio, but the throttle bodies have now been increased from 40mm up to 44. There's a different exhaust system with an altered catalyst to make sure that this achieves Euro 5 standards. And the valve timing has also been changed to alter the characteristics of the engine. As for the frame, that's pretty much a carryover of what's come before. So this can be kind of traced back to 2007. The only real difference is that the swing arm's been slightly altered, so it now weighs about 150 grams less. The wheelbase still sits at 1370. The rake and trail's been altered a little bit, but it's a very similar proposition to what people have known and loved before. Up front, you've got Showa big piston forks, fully adjustable, and likewise at the back there's a Showa monoshock that you can go in and tweak into your heart's content. As for the aesthetics, well look, there's no disguising this thing. It still looks very much CBR600RR, which is great. Obviously it's got the new winglets, which are there to improve downforce. Honda actually claimed that this CBR is the most slippery, the most aerodynamic 600RR to hit the market, and I don't doubt that. But I do want to put it to the test. So yeah, it's time to get kitted up, load my bag, and head out to Portimao so I can see what this thing is like on track. So I'm trying to remember the last time I rode a Supersport 600 machine on the track. And the truth of it is, it was a long time ago. I've ridden loads of 600s over the years on circuits, and I've always had this love affair with them. There's something extra special about being able to rinse a machine and kind of extract its potential versus when you're on a 1000cc bike and it's just taking you for a ride. But anyway, what was so fantastic about today was getting back out on a CBR600RR on a racetrack, especially around Portimao. And despite the fact it was absolutely drenched throughout, I was loving life. I came back in after the first 10-minute taster session, and yeah, I had this huge smile on my face. I had this, I felt absolutely fulfilled and buzzing and excited to get back out on track and do more and learn more about this package. And that's a feeling I haven't had on a sports bike in quite a while, because sports bikes nowadays are predominantly 1000cc and they're so serious. There's so much tech, so much power, etc. But this, with its 119 brake horsepower, just felt so much more manageable and I don't know, endearing, you know, and like I could be the boss of it, or so I thought, because actually I'm going to cut straight to it. Second session, about 18 minutes in, I got a little bit cocky, high-sided myself, and I think I ticked the box of being the first person probably in the world to write off a 2024 spec CBR600RR. Really sorry about that, Honda. They very kindly got me back out on track 10 minutes later or whatever on a different coloured bike, but you know, the same potent 600RR.
Yeah.
Just give me some advice, right? So, written one off.
Leave it in the pits.
Yeah.
And just have a cup of tea.
All right, okay.
That's the best advice I can offer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cut to it and say, what makes this bike so special? Well, ultimately, you know, being a 600, being a little bit less weighty than 1,000, this thing weighs in road spec at 193 kg. It was surprisingly agile. It's very easy to place the machine where I wanted it to be, to pull it back to apexes. And this is despite the fact that the show suspension, both front and rear, had been backed off, you know, so it's a bit more forgiving in the wet and all the rest of it. But I felt truly comfortable kind of pitching into bends. I had loads of feel coming from the machine and just absolute confidence in it. Like I said, too much confidence, but until my accident, you know, I was absolutely loving life. I was buzzing and every single lap felt so special. And then there was the engine. So like I say, not loads and loads of power. In fact, probably 100 horsepower less than what you can expect on the Fireblade, for example, just under 95 brake horsepower less. And that really told as well, you know, it was a nice bike, it was powerful, but it wasn't ripping my arms off. It wasn't kind of hooking up into sporadic wheelies and, you know, testing my balls and my riding potential every single second on the track. It felt like the ride was so much more predictable and I was so much more connected with the riding experience versus, like I say, you know, going for a wild ride on a liter bike. So I really enjoyed that. The power on the 600, and I've got to say this with the caveat of knowing that I have actually a high-sided one today. But what I would say is, there are times when I've forgotten just how much you've got to keep a 600 on the boil. You know, I was coming out some of the bends, maybe, you know, trying to run as much speed through as I could, but, you know, if I was maybe 1,000, 2,000 RPM lower than where I wanted to be for that gear selection, I was actually talking to the bike. I was like, come on, I want to get going again. And then it would kind of erupt into the higher revs and away you go. And that was all part of the experience again, that, you know, there's something really special about knowing you've got that window of power. It's there, but it's on you to make the right choice of gear. It's on you to carry the corner speed. It's on you to, you know, get cracking with that throttle and driving out of corners in order to keep the revs nice and high. There's a different challenge to riding one of these. And I think that was, again, part of the charm of this bike on track today. It challenged me in a way that a liter bike doesn't. And that was so rewarding. It's not a kind of crazy bike. It doesn't make irrational power at one point and less at another. It's quite predictable and linear with its delivery. Like I say, you have got to get the thing revving. But, you know, when the power comes through, there's nothing crazy about it. It's a nice, smooth trajectory and, you know, you've got a good connection with the engine, you know, through that throttle. But I would say this, actually, compared to some bikes, there maybe isn't the refinement in the actual throttle, the initial pickup that there are even on some bigger liter bikes. I don't know whether that's a technological thing or whatever, but I did find on a few occasions that there was quite a bit of snatch when you crack the throttle and it translated to the rear wheel, you know, with a bit of urgency. It wasn't the most clinical or clean, but, you know, at any other point, if you're rolling the throttle or if you're full throttle, nice, smooth fuel delivery. So jobs are good in that respect. Another thing which I fell in love with was the slip and assist clutch on this thing. So the first corner, for example, 6th gear down the straight, bang it down the box to 2nd gear. And I mean, I couldn't even hear what was going on because there was just all this screaming from the exhaust note. I was trying to define exactly, you know, where I was or, you know, whether I was punishing the bike too much, but it felt nice and stable on the brakes and kind of going into the bends. You know, I knew by the time I was ready to pitch into the first corner, everything was where it should be. You know, the revs, you know, including for the exit of that next corner were where they should be and life was great. And I was just really pleasantly surprised with how good the absorption of revs was with the slip and assist clutch. Honda did a lot of work on the exhaust. There's some real clever stuff in order to make this Euro 5 Plus compatible, but they've done so without robbing it of the actual scream and the noise and the excitement of a 600. So I really like that. And like I say, on track, where today, screaming the nuts off the thing all the time, you know, that was another part of the reward. It wasn't just being able to kind of tick off the apexes or whatever, or brake deep or whatever. It was kind of getting that buzz from the exhaust note resonating through as well. It's absolutely fantastic to hear an engine screaming like this did today on a racetrack. So, you know, another part of its charm. Braking, what I'd say is that the Honda has got good stopping power. I'm not going to turn around and say that, you know, there's loads of bite, you know, or it's super powerful or whatever. But there was good feel through the lever. It's got quite a simple span adjuster on it, you know, so I was able to kind of calibrate that to suit what I wanted from the bike. So I always had good feel. The lever set in the position that I wanted it to be. I was able to trail brake even in the wet and just feel comfortable with the package. So like I say, I'm not going to kind of bleat on too much about them, but I'd say the brakes were good. And this being the case, despite the fact that this has got ABS engaged on it, you know, you can't switch that off. But even in the wet, you know, I didn't really have any issues with the ABS, and I felt pretty strong out there on track. So jobs are good in that respect. And in terms of kind of like the rider comfort, this is a small bike. So, I mean, I'm 5'10", I'm not exactly a giant. What I did find was, you know, it was a relatively compact machine. You know, you sit very much in a CBR600RR, you've got the tank wrapped up around you. The screen is really not that big. I mean, one big change, you know, that Honda did for this year was to kind of lower the top of the tank, I think by 10 mils, so you can get further tucked in. There's a nice big recess at the front of the tank as well, so you can get your helmet in. And you can really fold up on the bike. But again, you know, the more flexible you are, the shorter you are, I dare say, the more accommodating this bike will be for you. At the same time, I will say aesthetically, the package has never looked meatier and more substantial. I mean, it's one of those bikes now that from a distance you can look at and think, you know, is that a 6 or is that a foul, you know? And I think it's great what Honda has done aesthetically with the model to kind of move it on to make it current for now. And I guess one of the biggest points I want to make is that after today's sessions on track, I just felt super, super excited and grateful to have got back out on a machine just like this. And it blows my mind that, you know, it's been 7 years since Honda last sold a CBR600RR. It's so great that it's back. It's one of those bikes that I really want to get to know better. I'm going to try and, you know, beg Honda to let me go out on another one as soon as I can, because I think, you know, it's just fantastic to have them back. And I think it's one of those things as well, there've been quite a few people, myself included, that have been calling out for more 600s on the market. And look, we've got one here, and not just anyone, a cracking one. It's such a lovely, refined bike, very exciting. The technology on it is great as well. It's the full package. And best of all, it weighs in at under 10,500 pounds. When that price was announced, I was genuinely taken aback. I thought it was going to be much higher. You know, especially considering the equipment that's now on it. But Honda's done a great thing, and it's just hard to believe there hasn't been a 600RR on the market for the past 7 years, but it's here. And if I were you, you know, in fact, I want to encourage you to go and give it a try, especially if you're kind of track inclined, you know, and you want to go and have a fun bike that you can use on the road, turn to the circuit and not be intimidated by it. This is the machine that you want. It's been an awesome day. So great to reignite that love affair with 600s, and I can't wait to do more on one.